It is once again that one day of the year where my interest isn't a joke. Happy Star Wars Day. Now, picking a Star Wars game to talk about is no easy feat, especially when there's so many of them. Definitely not that one. But you know what my three major interests are: Star Wars, Nintendo, and portable gaming. Yeah, I guess I should get these out of the way.
The Game Boy, the handheld system that changed handheld systems. Sure, it may be a fucking piece of shit these days, but you can't detest this guy's impact in the portable gaming space. The use of interchangeable cartridges, multiplayer potential, and a terrible screen dominated any competition, and this is easily one of the most recognizable icons of the 90s. So many franchises, whether originating in games or films, made their way here, and of course, Star Wars was no exception.
During the Game Boy's reign from 1989 to 1998, there were no new Star Wars films released, but that didn't change the fact that the original trilogy remained a pillar of pop culture. So, naturally, throughout the 90s, the entire trilogy made its way to the Game Boy.
Now, interestingly enough, these three games were actually based on console games. These are just ports to the Game Boy. So that makes these a bit more impressive as long as they're good versions. First up is Star Wars, based on the original film, later renamed Episode 4: A New Hope. The NES version is a hard-as-nails 2D side-scroller, and this is no different.
Now, I have made a fair amount of progress in this game before, so allow me to run you through how the hell this weird-ass thing works.
Alright, so first off, we have a solid enough take on the opening crawl, followed by a pretty good looking cutscene, at least for Game Boy standards. Some text fills us in on what's up. You start right after R2 goes missing looking for Obi-Wan, but as soon as gameplay starts, you're shot right into this cave. Now, you can use this as a tutorial of sorts to figure out the controls, but there is no benefit of going through this cave and you can just leave immediately. The game starts with an overhead land speeder pseudo open world area. It's just a large Tatooine landscape with a bunch of random caves you can explore. There are benefits to exploring some of the caves, but I never go out of my way to do so. First priority is to find R2. Now in the film, he's found in the Jundland Waste, so you'd assume you'd go there, but no. Instead, you go to the Sandcrawler, which barely even looks like one. When I first played this, I thought it was a temple of sorts, but 3PO chimes in saying R2's in here. So going through the Sandcrawler, we're treated to the core gameplay, and it isn't terrible. It's a 2D side-scroller, as I said earlier, and it controls alright. However, a big issue with this port is screen crunch. Unless you played this before, it takes forever to navigate the Sandcrawler. There's so many weird things you have to do to reach certain areas. Like these arrows shoot you up and you can jump from here to gain more height, but if you don't do that, you can't reach this ledge that looks like you're not supposed to reach. Or here, you have to jump on the arrow thing, which lets you float over to this platform. Some of the platforming feels like something out of a Mario Maker level. It's not terrible, it's just unorthodox. But once you figure out how it works, it's not that bad. After finding R2, 3PO says that R2 claims he belongs to a Ben Kenobi, so now you need to find Obi-Wan. Well, Obi-Wan found Luke while he was looking for R2, but at this point in the game, why would Luke look for Obi-Wan? He found R2, which was what he needed, so why not go home?
And where is Obi-Wan? What do you think? Maybe the Jundland Wastes, maybe his house, or a cave? Yeah.
Yup. Obi-Wan is in a cave. Why? Also, what the hell are these enemies? There were Jawas in the Sandcrawler, but what is this? What are these dragonflies and what the fuck is that? Is that supposed to be a Tusken Raider? It looks nothing like one, but if that is supposed to be Obi-Wan, I guess anything could be a Tusken Raider. Anyways, Obi-Wan gives you Anakin's lightsaber and now it's on to Mos Eisley. Now, the game doesn't tell you, it's just another one of those things that you just have to know. But getting there is a pain too. There's no map for this overworld area, which isn't a huge issue. The Sandcrawler's in the top left corner, Mos Eisley in the bottom right, but it's not hard to get disoriented. Once in Mos Eisley, you make your way to the cantina to meet with Han, but my god, this part sucks. In the way are a bunch of Rhodians and Ithorians, which can only be killed with a lightsaber, but each swing with the lightsaber has a second-long delay, so you have to time your swing just right to make sure you actually hit them. Combine that with the screen crunch and how fast the enemies are going, and this part is hard. Eventually, you get to Han and can play as him, and he can kill Rhodians. I don't know about Ithorians though, I tried to kill one, it killed me, and then I couldn't play as Han anymore, so I'm stuck with Luke and his shitty lightsaber. You'd think the saber would be awesome, but no, it's fucking horrible. The delay in swinging it is so bad, and if possible, I'd prefer to use the blaster since you don't need to be right next to an enemy to kill it, but these enemies are too powerful to use the blaster on them. After you leave the cantina, oh my,
Oh, what the fuck? There was a stormtrooper right outside the door ready to hit you as soon as you come out. And guess what? This becomes the respawn point for the rest of this section. So guess what happens every time you die? You better fucking start running.
Well, now you have to make your way to Docking Bay 94, but this section is terrible. On the way, you have to face stormtroopers, Jawas, and whatever the hell this is. Now, the stormtrooper and droid thing aren't bad, they just walk around, but the Jawas, oh my. They just come down from the sky, floating down to deal damage to you, and every time you die, it's back to the cantina entrance with a stormtrooper. Learning to beat this is an endurance test. Take a step forward, then 2 back. Another step, 3 back. Then you die to a Jawa who randomly appeared and
Give up and move on. I mean, this isn't a terrible game. If you want to play it, I'd recommend trying the NES version. Or you could just try neither and you'll be a lot more happier.
Now we have The Empire Strikes Back, published by Ubisoft. Now I don't have much experience with this one, and allow me to show you why. First off, as soon as the opening crawl is over, on to gameplay. No title screen, options, nothing. You start on Hoth riding a Tauntaun, and just a few steps in, a text screen with Han pops up telling you a meteor struck nearby. So we're Luke when he's about to get attacked by the Wampa, but that doesn't happen here. Instead, you keep moving forward before falling into a giant cave that I have no idea how to navigate. When you fall like a feather. I swear, you spend most of your time in this game just falling. Also, you don't have to ride the Tauntaun. Doing so gives you extra health, but you have so much more mobility off of it, as if that means much. Luke is so clunky in this game. I will give it this does feel more like an NES game, but don't take this as a compliment. Speaking of feeling like something, during this whole game, the Star Wars theme is just looping in the background. It feels familiar.
I sense something. A presence I have not felt since. Oh yeah! Bad!
Yeah, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade on Game Boy. Similarly, you're exploring a cave while the Indiana Jones theme is looped in the background. It made me feel like I was going insane there, and the same can be said for this game. And of course, they were both published by our best buds over at Ubisoft, but developed by separate companies. Maybe Ubisoft just held a gun to their head. So eventually, after some clunky platforming, I made my way to— holy shit! A Wampa! Oh god, oh come on! Killing this guy is a pain. Luckily, he doesn't seem to go to the edge of this ledge, so if I can make it here, I should be able to stand still and shoot him. But just look at this. I always jump a bit too far and get knocked back off. Oh, come on. Go. No, yeah, there, finally. Okay, yeah, this works. Very, very slowly. God, it's just a Wampa. How many shots does it take to kill? God, come on. Come on. Oh, finally. Man. Alright. Back out of this cave, Han says the meteor was an Imperial probe. Which one? Because I've seen like 5 at this point. And back into another cave. Well, I should be able to make my way through it. Just fall down. Leap of faith. The screen crunch doesn't help much. Oh, what the hell? No. Oh, come on!
Wait. Back? At the beginning of the game? Are you fucking serious? No checkpoints? Well, I have some continues. Not like that helps much when it sends me back to the beginning of the fucking game. I mean, I may as well just restart the system and I'll start at the same point. You know, that's what playing this game is like.
Can't even get past the first stage. But let's be real, who would have the patience to do so? With the leaps of faith, enemies that won't die, and the clunky controls, I can't even tolerate playing this for 10 minutes. Well, that's A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back on Game Boy, ports of NES games. However, there was never a Return of the Jedi game on NES, but there was still one on Game Boy, so what gives? Well, on the Super Nintendo, the entire trilogy was adapted in the Super Star Wars trilogy. 16-bit hard-as-nail side-scrollers that adapted the films beautifully. And so, to wrap up the trilogy on Game Boy, they brought over Return of the Jedi as Super Return of the Jedi.
A Super Nintendo game on Game Boy. A Super Nintendo game on Game Boy. I have a bad feeling about this.
Well, to start, there's a password screen, which is good to see. In the very likely scenario I can't get past level 1, I can still see some of the rest of the game. Cutscenes return once again, and they look quite good here. And jumping into the game itself, like the console version, you have a choice of who to play as. Well, give me fucking Luke. And wow. Well, I have to give it this. It's not great, but that's purely because it's on Game Boy. As an adaptation of Super Star Wars to Game Boy, it's not terrible. It feels smooth enough, controls well, looks acceptable for this screen, and it brings that fun from the console game on the go. And it's very faithful to the console version because, well,
it's hard as shit.
The Super Star Wars trilogy strikes an excellent balance of being difficult but not frustrating. It's hard beyond belief, but it's so fun, and this, yeah, it works. I can't manage to get past the first level boss, but it's no biggie because of the password screen. It seems to be missing some levels from the console version, but it still has most of the scenes you'd want here, like inside Jabba's palace, the Ewok village where you play as Wicket, which is pretty annoying, more leaps of faith, the classic screen crunch does not help at all, and Wicket just isn't as powerful as Luke, so it's naturally a bit harder. Speaking of leaps of faith, check out this jump in the Death Star 2. I had no idea what to do here for a minute until I guessed to jump just to see a little platform. Now that is the leap of faith of leaps of faith. There's even a level of the Falcon running the Death Star. You have to figure out whether you need to go above or below these obstacles, because we all know that is just the best game mechanic.
But hey, you know what? Above all else, this game is nowhere near as bad as the others. It's actually pretty tolerable, especially for a Super Nintendo game ported to Game Boy. I don't hate this.
Well, that is the Star Wars trilogy on Game Boy, and while there isn't much to say about these games, especially nice things, there's one important thing about them. They brought the legendary trilogy to portable consoles for the first time ever. They're relics of the 90s, for a relic of the 90s that should stay in the 90s.
I would know because I wasn't around.
Now, technically there is one more Star Wars game that you can play on Game Boy, that being Star Wars Yoda Stories. This was a port of a desktop game, however, it's technically not a Game Boy game. It's one of these black Game Boy cartridges, made for Game Boy Color, but they can be played on the original Game Boy. But like any other one of these, when I played them, I asked myself,
why the hell would I do this?
So I'll save this for whenever I decide to look at Star Wars games for the Game Boy Color. This discussion works best as just talking about the original trilogy. But on the topic of these games, did you know a few years ago, Limited Run Games re-released Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back on Game Boy? Yeah, they came in packaging reminiscent of the classic Kenner action figures, and the cartridges themselves are a transparent plastic. These are cool, but they were limited edition alongside the NES games. Would be kind of neat to own, and they're not necessarily expensive, but why the hell would I pay $50 to have a modern re-release of a game I don't like?
Can you imagine buying something you already own again just because there's a few changes about it? Because as a Star Wars fan, I sure as hell can.